So Russell, welcome to Colyer-Fergusson. It's
Thank you.
not the first time you've been here, is it?
I've attended at least 2 or 3 performances, and I've also attended several rehearsals of things that you've been doing here, of mine.
That's right.
And it's a wonderful place. I always like coming back here.
It's a really fantastic space, isn't it? It's a
Yeah.
lovely place to kind of work and rehearse and perform. Because it was 2017, I think.
I think so,
You
yeah.
did your Star of the East.
Yeah,
that
the
lovely
Christmas Carol. Yeah.
And then the year later we did your In Paradisum
Yep.
for the upper voices.
Yep.
And as you say, yes, you came to rehearsals and worked with the choir, didn't you? Which was fantastic. And the current project is for the 10-year anniversary of Colyer-Fergusson. So we've invited you to write a setting of the Magnificat.
Yep.
But it's not a usual setting of the Magnificat, is it?
Yeah, so it's got the Magnificat text, but then there are also these 4 poems by Nancy Gaffield. She wrote these 4 beautiful poems inspired by paintings that in some ways stand alone from the piece, but are also carefully interpolated into the piece. So we have one of the movements, and then we have one of her poems, and together the whole thing fits together as one piece. So it's a little bit different, it's a little bit quirky in that way, but hopefully it works, hopefully it all hangs together.
And it's quite, for me, you know, we've been working and rehearsing it with the Cecilian Choir
Sure.
since about the 2nd or 3rd week of October. It's, as you say, they're quite different, aren't they? You've got the sacred text,
Yeah.
and then you've got Nancy's rather, as I think you've said, rather more abstract poems
Yes.
that are in response to, there's the Michelangelo's sculptures and then the Pietà. There's the Ghirlandaio's, is it the Annunciation?
Yep.
And there's also the Sistine Chapel, where God and Adam are almost
Yep.
reaching across the touch.
Yep.
So they're quite famous works of art, aren't they, to which she's written these poems in response.
Yes, she's written, the poems she's written are extremely beautiful. They're quite abstract, and what they do amazingly is they capture, the poems themselves capture a sense of the visual. So you really get a sense of these paintings, the sense of the artwork themselves. And then, so it's what's incredible about it, or the challenge for me, but what was exciting about it was knowing that there's that kind of sequence, that she was responding to paintings, and then I was responding to her words. So it kind of goes art, words, music. And I found that really interesting and very different, quite a different way to work. But you're right, yeah, the 4 poems are quite different. And that was one of the big challenges for me, because obviously they slot into the Magnificat, and we place them in between different movements of it. So that was quite a challenge, because on the one hand, I wanted to give them a different life, a different energy, but they had to sit within the overall frame of the piece and connect, so that it didn't feel like something totally different out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, it was the most interesting aspect of the commission, and it was also the most difficult thing to do, to try and merge them while keeping them separate. And
that's in part we approached you because we've worked with you before. We the various choirs that we've got have sung some of your music, so it was a musical landscape that I liked. Let's face it, it was just an opportunity for me to kind of indulge a whole year in the musical language that I really enjoy working in. But it was part of it was finding someone who, because you're experienced in writing for young voices, for want of a better word, for amateur ensembles and amateur voices, and it was finding someone who could write for that, who understood that particular sound world and that approach to writing music, but didn't necessarily cheapen their musical language. What you've written for us is still, we've been working really hard, because bits of it are quite tricky and quite challenging, but it feels like you haven't compromised on your musical invention in order to write for a choir that's made up of students and staff here at the university who aren't reading music. They're all doing, degrees that are going to lead to more lucrative careers, perhaps like law and history and politics and all that kind of thing. But they have that interest and that desire to carry on making music socially and communally, and you've not lost sight of that somehow in writing music, but it still feels like you've remained true to your compositional, your sort of compositional inventiveness, if that's right.
Thank you, that's very kind. That's really very kind of you to say. I mean, I love writing music for professionals and people. We were talking about this earlier. I don't like this word amateur because it somehow seems patronising. But I suppose people who are not doing music for their living, so they don't have to earn their money by singing or playing or whatever. But I like writing music for both equally. But there is, I suppose, there is something maybe in some ways, a little bit richer in writing for people who are not professionals, who are not doing it professionally, because they bring something a little bit different to it. And I've always liked that. I've always liked that sense. Sometimes there can be a stronger sense of community, or a stronger sense of the social aspect of the choir or orchestra or whoever they are. And they it might be their only musical experience once a week or something, and they can bring something special to it. So yeah, I've always liked writing for young people and for people who are, I suppose I have to use this word amateur, but you know what I mean.